To me, I think this is one of the workshops where it was highly interactive, where people from diverse settings and from different countries attended, and there were very open and frank discussions about the CRIBS. What the first impression I had was people were exposed to an institutional way of handling issues around climate change, climate finance, technology, and so on and so forth. In this particular workshop, it was encouraging for people to think a little bit differently and see the merits of the CRIBS approach, and also frankly discuss the challenges around the CRIBS approach, and find out how, as countries move on to meet their commitments under the climate change, the new climate change agreement, how they can integrate this kind of innovative systems in terms of achieving their national targets. So I found it to be very interesting, very frank, and challenging discussions, and hopefully very useful for participants. I think for scaling, this is a very, very good start because they have initial feedback and understanding about what the CRIBS approach is, how it is a tested approach, and there's a lot of literature behind it. That's exposure that I think as participants we received. And how to scale it then requires, my assessment is much more engagement at country level and at regional level. So if there are more opportunities then to engage countries, institutions that are dealing with climate change mitigation issues, and expose them more to this approach, I think that would be very helpful. That's at the country level. But at a regional scale, I think it would be important again to engage in this awareness raising around CRIBS and discuss how regional thinking around climate change is going to reflect on this approach. For example, climate change is a big area for UNECA. We have the African Climate Policy Center, which is also supporting the African negotiators on technical matters. I think it would be very important to initiate that discussion with the center. Within EAC, I know they also have a climate change division working on these issues regionally. It would be also interesting to initiate the initial thoughts and engagements, and how countries can be better supported around these innovative systems. So that engagement is that. The other idea I think that emerged is countries are already saying there are existing frameworks of engagement from global to country level with identified institutions. That means the engagement and awareness creation and better information about this approach should not be limited to regional and country levels, but should be ambitious and reach out to the negotiators and also to at the COP level when these discussions happen. And the language has to be captured properly. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of better awareness creation and engagement going forward. I would identify two immediate points of action that can be considered. One is this regional engagement around the CRIBS approach, and engage in discussion with UNECA, with EAC and other regional partners and regional players as to what are their existing methodologies and approaches in engaging innovation within the climate context, and how can they reflect that vis-a-vis the CRIBS approach. Chances are there are a lot of overlays between existing procedures and what we have learned here, but there could be also differences. And in that regard, I think that discussion with regional institutions to identify how to move forward with this approach would be very interesting. The second one, it's good that country representatives came to this training to be exposed to this idea and go back to their countries. And I think some form of follow-up in terms of further engagement, not to make it a one-off, one workshop, one engagement type of approach, but a sustaining the conversation around this, I think, will be helpful. We heard that there will be additional 2 workshops that will be organized, and I think that may be additional opportunity to sustain this conversation and see how it can go forward.
The workshop has really been very good. It's been very informative. I've learned a lot, and I think this concept of CRIB, and how do we utilize it in our national activities, especially to do with the climate change funds for the different activities that we are trying to implement within the national development agenda is very good. Obviously, as a new concept, it's going to take, it may need time for the different partners to appreciate it. But CRIBS in itself is a very good concept. What I would say is that we need to do more work to see that we adopt it as a country, but also to get our relevant authorities interested in CRIBS, because I know it will go a long way to help us attract climate change funds. This training has been, actually workshop has been very good, but it's been a bit short. Some of us, this is our first time to interface with CRIBS, so we need continuous engagement even after here. So my proposal would be, especially to acts, that you keep in touch with the colleagues who have come today, and you let them know of any new developments and any new literature. You need to keep them in the loop. Then after that, you need to organize more meetings, such meetings. Hopefully next time the meetings will be a bit bigger, and I think it will help if you send the materials earlier before we come for those meetings. Then after that, we have to come up with a roadmap. You know, the idea here is to how we can actually implement CRIBS, taking it from paper to actual implementation and adoption by the different governments. And that's where the challenge is now. So there will be need in the concurrent meetings to come up with a concrete roadmap on how we can operationalize CRIBS and how we can get the different partners interested in using it.
I must say that I've gained to get to know of what is happening in other parts of East Africa, because there was a lot of information that was shared by the participants, but I've also gained to know the upcoming initiatives that are putting the framework for accessing the climate finance. On how we can improve what we have learned today is to ensure that whatever results that are coming out from these kind of projects, the research projects, they are put in a proper way that can be used with policymakers for making the policies, because we have a lot that is going on in terms of projects, but then we are still recording very low outcomes at the community level in terms of use of science to improve livelihood. From the CSO's perspective, first of all, the issues that CSOs deals with working at the community, with the community at that very grassroots level, that is taking the technologies into practical areas, but also the lobbying from the community to the national level. Therefore, this workshop has helped me to get to know that there are other initiatives that we can now share with the communities, but that will make them come up with things that they want their government to do. So we also have messages now from the community to the policymakers to the national level. Well, I would advise that we should get, first of all, we should have more information disseminated to participants or to other stakeholders, because it's not only the small group that was in the room. We have more stakeholders who are relevant to the initiative. So we need to see how we can share the news that we have, but to keep in touch in terms of whether there are any developments. But if there's anything that we can do regionally in terms of collaboration, then that's the time, because usually if you take a person in the middle of the project, the impact of that project is usually very low. But if you have taken a participant from the initial implementation of the project, then the results will be more effective. So is to use these participants to the upcoming 12 months so that you have the effective results that we are looking forward to have.
Well, the two-day event has been an engaging one, but also it's been a space for learning and appreciating, and trying to align what I do back home on a daily basis, trying to align it to such a very important process, relevant process. And it's relevant in the sense that it relates to the struggles we've always talked about. I come from a civil society actor coordinating entity in Uganda. Climate Action Network coordinates more than 200 actors with a regional presence in all the regions of Uganda. So what I'm learning here, definitely what I've learned or shared will definitely fit into our ongoing work, ongoing struggles. And the struggle is basically around how to get the people that need services that will help them resiliently survive under the changing climate. And of course the CRIBS brings it out very well when it encourages as many stakeholder engagement, capacity building, analysis of their capacities, improving their capacities here and there, and also benefiting, the benefit being, aligned to what their resources, local resources, their available local resources, and trying to see how new technologies can be able to improve or even scale them up. On the part, I think it will be nice if there could be a platform that allows for further exchange, sharing, to see how the conversation that has been taking place here can really be sunk in the local realities that we left at home. So the continuation therefore will be in such a way that we could have engagements that of course talk about specific ways in which we can see this whole CRIBS concept being integrated into programs and policy, of course policies and programs at national level, but also, and that is on the part of government, but also on the part of the non-state actors. We need to have a deeper appreciation of, in very specific terms, of how we can integrate the various aspects, especially for capacity building and engaging, understanding the local realities and engaging policy to make sure that we can use the policy avenue or the policy as a vehicle to see how the good practices that are spelled out, the activities that are spelled out within the CRIBS program can be integrated into our ongoing local, national programs to benefit the most vulnerable to climate change, but also for them to be able to build their capacities, their local capacities in trying to respond to the changes and the effects of climate change.
Yeah, basically CRIBS is, although it's sectoral, dealing plainly with the climate change issues, I would want to say that it is very relevant to what I do, because actually what we do is to work with the national innovation system actors. Currently we know that our national innovation system, whether sectoral, regional, or even the national one, is quite weak. The linkages are weak, and this CRIBS will help us, if implemented, will help in identifying the actors that are going to manage the climate change issues, and also to define their roles so that they can be able to strengthen the climate change initiatives in Kenya. So for me, CRIBS will be making my work easy, because through the initiatives we will be able to identify the actors, especially those ones interested in climate change, and that will be part of our work as well, because we work with all sectors in the national innovation system.
Okay, and you've been here for 2 days. You've attended this intense workshop. So what are your thoughts about it? What are your feelings, experience about it?
I think the workshop has been very useful. This is one of the many workshops that I've attended with the ACTS, and the workshops I've found almost all of them to be useful. This specific one, as I've already explained, really makes my work easy, because through what we have done, the exercises and even the lectures and even the discussions, I think I've learned a lot that is going to help me in doing my work in strengthening the national innovation system. So, for example, we were doing exercises that helped us to identify actors. Those ones are important to the Kenya National Innovation Agency, because the actors that are going to be involved in these CRIBS initiatives are also our actors, given our mandate. So the workshop has been very useful, and I want to say that the initiative was well thought out, and the initiative was very relevant, especially when it comes to issues of climate change in relation to development and Vision 2030. I think in this case I want to just insist on trying to involve as many stakeholders as possible, because from the actor networks we can be able to define the roles of one another, and that one will make the work easier, because we will be going forward as a team, not waiting and then bringing in, for example, the government arm much later, or even the non-governmental organizations who are supposed to disseminate those informations much later, whereby you're just telling them that there is an innovation here, I want you to disseminate. So we should try as much as possible to involve as many actors as possible. We may not be able to involve all of them, but try to involve the main ones, the direct ones, the ones, for example, which we were identifying as the direct actors. Those ones should be involved as much as possible, so that we move together with the programs. When it comes to implementation, we implement them as a team, and not issues being raised that will be able to drag the programs behind. I think for ACTS, I would want to congratulate you people for the work you are doing here. We also already have some initiatives. We want to start also some initiatives through ACTS with the development partners, and I hope we're going to do a lot of work together in the near future.
This workshop has been like an eye-opener to a different approach in accessing climate funds, because we all know there are established mechanisms under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change on how to access climate funding. Now, the traditional method has not been productive, especially for developing countries and Africa in particular. So CRIBS gives us an opportunity. It's a new opportunity through which probably Africa might be able to access, the right funding to address adaptation and mitigation in our countries. Yeah. You see, one of the things I think we look into in terms of mobilizing climate funding is the whole issue of stakeholder consultation, because climate change is the impacts of climate change are very broad and they affect communities at large. So in mobilizing resources, it is extremely important to be able to bring together different stakeholders. Now with the CRIBS, it looks like the methodology that we are looking at is focusing on the use of different actors to be able to see the value addition in terms of their contributions towards coming up with relevant projects, which we can then propose for climate funding. So in terms of what I do, one of the things I do encourage is to promote stakeholder consultation in environmental management, and when it comes to actual mobilization of resources, CRIBS, the use of the CRIBS approach might provide a stronger basis for funding, because it doesn't only look at the whole question of innovation, but it also addresses the challenges in environmental management which affect the real people, the local communities who are affected by climate change. I think in terms of step forward, I look at this workshop as the first stage of bringing this methodology to the stakeholders, meaning the countries which participated in this workshop. So we have been able to look at the methodology as it would be relevant at the regional level. I would suppose that the next steps should be looking at ways of now going into country-specific situations so that CRIBS can be actually tested at the country level, being able to bring together stakeholders at a national level, teach them this methodology, and see how they can actually come up with the specific projects addressing climate change issues. That is one, but I think there is also the need of constant information exchange for those who participated in this workshop. I think by those two approaches, probably we'll be able to come up with something which is very useful.